Hello and welcome to the third video of the Revit series. I know we discussed going over families this week. However, after some consideration, I've decided to go ahead and push that to next week, and then we'll have 2 consecutive weeks of families. This week on this video, I really want to focus on completing this floor, adding some elements such as components, plumbing fixtures, ceiling plan and an area plan, those sort of things on the third floor before we actually move on to creating custom families, because we haven't really placed any components yet. The only components that we've actually placed are a couple of windows and a couple of doors in this area. So we really haven't had the chance to experiment with more components and different families. So this week I'd say we will fine-tune this floor. We'll try and make some things to code, check out the area, figure out the occupant load for this floor. Now, not everything's going to be to code simply because this class isn't about code research, so I'm not going to force that upon you. I'm not going to worry about means egress. If it looks okay, we're going to assume that it's okay. We're not going to do any calculations. However, I think it might be interesting to maybe do some calculations of the floor area to figure out how many toilets we need, how many sinks we need, how many water closets we need, elevator space, and so on and so forth like that. So we're going to do a little bit of, or I'm going to do a little bit of research, and I'll try and point out where I get this information from so you can do it on your own. I'm not going to focus on that too much, but I will try to explain where I get the numbers from. So I guess for the first thing that we need to create in order to do some of these calculations that I'm talking about would be an area plan. And then there's different types of area plans. The area plan we're really concerned about is the total area, rentable area of the space. And all of the calculations that I've done here or will be doing here will be based off of the IBC 2006 code. I don't have the up-to-date code here with me, so all the numbers that I'm pulling, just be aware that those are from the 2006, and I don't imagine that they've changed much since. However, it's always good to double check those numbers to the new code. So if you remember last week, go ahead and open up what we left off on last week. Now, I haven't changed anything, so everything should still be right where we've left off here. Third floor, still have the elevator shaft, doors, everything in place. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and create an area plan. And to create an area plan, I'm going to go to the Home tab. And over here in this area under Room and Area, you can see we have some different options. I'm going to click on Area, and I'm going to click Area Plan. It's going to ask me what floor and what type that I'm interested in. Now, when you do your calculations for occupancy load, we can stick with gross building, and we're only interested in the third floor. So let's see. This should be okay. The scale is fine. We can change all of that later. So I'm going to hit OK. It's going to ask me if I want to automatically create boundary lines. So I'm going to hit yes. Now you'll see an area plan came into my project browser over here. Gross building, third floor. And on the actual drawing screen, you'll see this purple line around the exterior. That shouldn't cause any problems, the fact that that's not touching. We'll get an error if it does. We'll correct that. Now, for the sake of this area plan, my concern was, and I wasn't too sure about this, and might need to be refreshed, if I should include this elevator core as the part of my gross. And I'm going to go ahead and include it for the sake of this, just because even if we didn't include this, as you'll see, I can get rid of that by hitting the area and then doing an area boundary line, and I can draw a rectangle around this core here. The inside, the walls would be included. Hit escape, and you'll see my area only drops 1,000. And you might not think that that's much, but when we go to do our calculations, you're going to find out that we're going to have to round up to the nearest 2,000 or nearest 1,000 anyway. So we'll end up rounding up to 20,000 anyway for the most part. So for the sake of this calculation, to be on the safe side, it never hurts to have more of anything. Sometimes when you're pressed for space, you really want to crunch these numbers, but we have such a large area on this floor and in this building in general. So on this floor, we have such a large area that it's not going to hurt us to go ahead and get rid of this. So I'm going to select that line and hit Tab. And remember, when I hit Tab, it selects the entire line. It selects the chain, and then I need to click, and that'll select all of those, and then I can hit Delete. And that area will go back up to 2340, and I'll just put that in the middle somewhere. This is the area plan. Remember, we're on the area plan, so this plan is going to be separate from everything else. Now, sometimes it won't automatically put that there, and the need to come up here and hit area will come into play. And you'll notice I can place more tags here, but it's going to give me an error because I already have one. Duplicate error. Sometimes this area won't automatically be there. Let me see if I can actually go ahead and delete that by selecting the X. And then if I come up here and hit area again, I can place that area. So if the area is missing, I can replace it by coming up to the area drop down and selecting area. So remember, we select area plan first to give us the boundary line, which is this purple line. And that goes around what we want to calculate. And then we come back after that, if it's not already there, and create an area inside of that area boundary line. Okay, so now that we know the basic square footage of this floor, okay, this floor is huge. We're talking about 20,000 square feet here. And this is the third floor of 5. So this building is actually quite massive. And to be honest, when I created this building, I didn't have any idea. I kind of was just creating lines. So we ended up with a massive building simply because I was kind of just sketching out ideas. So we're going to just go ahead and keep working with it. It's going to be an interesting floor. It gives us plenty of space to experiment. So we'll stick with this building. Now, in building codes, whenever you have that course, you're going to find out how to do certain calculations. And I'm not going to take you through all that, like I said, now, because this isn't a course focusing on building codes. But what I basically did was in the actual building codes book, if you go to the means of egress section of the code manual, and I believe, let me see here, table 1004.1.1 in the 2006 IBC, it's going to give you a list of floor area per occupants, and basically I classified this building as a business type. So what that gave me was 100 gross, 100 square feet per person. So then I took the total square footage, 2234. So I'll pull up a calculator here. Escape 2234. All right, divided by 100. That gives me 202 as the occupant load. So we're going to write that number down for future reference. I'm going to go ahead and, because we're lenient on the square footage, I'm going to be lenient in this number and say it's an even 200. That way, when I have to bump up, I'm not going to have to bump up because of 2 occupants. So this is the kind of stuff that, like I said, in code class, you're going to learn how to avoid or manipulate. Here, I'm just going to go ahead and automatically, for the sake of this Revit tutorial, bump this number down to 200. And that's our occupant load for the 3rd floor. Now, this number can change too. If you've noticed, what we haven't included in this floor yet is a stairway, and we'll include a stairway later on in some portion of this, probably back in here. Usually in a corner or so is where you'll find the stairway. We might even need 2, technically, with the means of egress being so large. However, like I said, we're not going to focus on that too much. We're going to learn how to create stairs, and we're going to throw a stairway in there, and that's going to be the extent of that. I'm not going to go through the occupant load classification and calculation. So what I am interested in is kind of roughing in the amount of toilets that I need. In order to successfully calculate the amount of toiletry objects you need, you have to go through the occupant load and figure out how many people max will be on that floor, and the maximum amount of people on that floor, as we just discovered, is going to be 200. So if you flip through the code manual even more, you will find an area that has the required toilets for a business type class and the code states that you need 2 toilets for the first 50 people, and then 1 toilet for each 50 after that. The code also states that you need 1 sink for 40, and then after that, I'm sorry, you need 1 sink for the first 1 sink per 40 for the first 80, and then 1 sink per 80 for the remainder. So they kind of word it kind of funny, especially if you have a large amount of people. You could go ahead and just say that I need 2 for the first 80. And then I need 1 water cooler or 1 water fountain per 100 people on this floor. So that means I'm going to need 2 water fountains actually on this floor to meet code. And I need at least 1 service sink on each floor, or a janitor's closet or something similar to that. So those are some things I want to make sure that we include in this Revit file. And we got that off of figuring out the occupancy load, and that gave us a rough idea that we're going to need 5 toilets, 4 sinks, and 2 water closets. And that was based off of the rounding up to 200. So, and I had mentioned before, I'm going to switch over to my 3rd floor plan here. 3rd floor. So we were in the area plan before. Notice the area marker is gone. The area, all that stuff's gone because that remains only on the area plan view. So that's view specific. If I wanted to go back there, I could come down here and click, and you'll see I'm back to my area plan. So we'll see that we can color in different areas later on, or add rooms and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go to 3rd floor again. And remember, in this area, I was kind of interested in putting the restrooms here originally. So I think it looks like we still have some space to do that. I'm going to go ahead and try and fit both of those restrooms. And remember, we need, we need 5 toilets, and that doesn't necessarily include ADA stalls. I didn't reference the ADA handbook to see how many of those stalls that I actually needed. And I imagine we probably need at least 1, if not 2, in this size of a room, ADA stalls. So for the sake of this, and anybody out there watching that is stringent on the code, I apologize, but we're probably only going to squeeze 1 of those in there for now, simply because the sake of this tutorial isn't to figure out the occupancy load and the ADA requirements. It's just to figure out how to place the components and draw the actual drawing. So we're probably only going to try and squeeze 1 of these in here, and if we need more space, we can bump this wall down. Obviously, we've got room here. So we're going to go ahead and focus on this area for now until we get the restrooms created. All right, so again, I have no intention or no plan on how I want this to be laid out. I'm kind of just going to go through and sketch this out as I go and try and place as many components as possible. I can kind of get an idea of how I want my doors to be. I'm not a big fan of keeping the doors close to each other, which is okay if that's what you want to do. I'm actually going to put the entrance door up here and the entrance door down here, and I'll do a little wall there for separation. So I'm going to go ahead and throw those in there now. A wall, and let's see, I need to change my wall type and make sure that it's on an interior wall type. I don't need an 8-inch wall here, so I'm going to go ahead and do a 5-inch partition, 2-hour. For now, this could, obviously this would probably change when we start thinking about finishes, and I'm going to just draw an entrance type like that. I'm going to make sure that I have my space that I need here. I'm going to need at least 5 feet because for a wheelchair turnaround circle, in order for a wheelchair to turn around, you need to leave a diameter of 5 feet or 60 inches. So I need at least 5 feet here. And this, like I said, is a huge, huge floor. There's no reason to be stingy here. So I'm going to go ahead and make this 5'6" for a comfortable turnaround. All right. And again, I need a door to the entrance here, so I'm going to add a door, select door, and let's see. For now, I'm going to go ahead and do just a single flush, 36 by 84. Okay, that's going to be 3 feet by. That's. No, that's right. That's 7 feet. Okay. Had my numbers confused there. Okay, so the door swing I'm going to go ahead and put here. Remember, after you place a door, if you want the swing to be opposite, these arrows are what is going to control that. So if I want to flip the swing of the door, I can hit the double arrow and notice that the door swing flips. If I wanted the door to swing out, I could have it swing out in that fashion there. Now, for a bathroom door, it's going to be okay to have it swing in as far as means of egress go. And to keep it consistent with the room or the hallway here, you can consider where this door is actually going to be placed. And it looks like this column line is the center line of this. So in order to keep the view line of this hallway somewhat symmetrical, I'm going to try and align the center of this door to this grid line. And to do that, I'm going to use the Align tool. So I'll go to Modify and use my Align tool. And remember, you select what you want to align to first. And I want the center of my door. Notice there's an actual hidden center line here. I want the center of my door to be aligned there. And that turns out to be actually pretty nice because I get room for my trim here. It's not too bad. So the door is going to swing an odd way, of course. However, you could probably switch that. I actually think I would probably like the door to swing. I think I'd like the door to swing that way. So as long as the door centered on this hallway is my concern. And you can see this center line now remains nice and centered. So we've dodged a bullet there. So I have this huge empty space back here, but again, I have a large open hallway. That's no big deal. As long as I have room for trim on both sides, we should be okay. Okay, so now I have the door coming in here, and sometimes you might see even a wall over here on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a wall. And to show you more use of the Align tool, I'm just going to kind of just drop it in here with no certain space. And I'm going to use my Align tool again to align this space to this space. And I'll lock that. When I lock that, what that means is if I move either one of these walls, both of them will move. So no matter what I do, these walls remain perpendicular. And that's kind of what I want to do. I want to make sure that I lock walls together when they need to be. I'm going to go to annotate and do an align dimension here to check my spacing. You can see that this opening is just under 6 feet. I might as well just make that an even 6 feet, and you'll notice that the wall over to the right gets smaller because that is the wall that's selected. And I can delete that because I don't need that dimension anymore. All right, the more that I look at this door, the more that I'm realizing that I don't think I can get away with this because it cuts into the area of turnaround here. Not only that, it looks really funny. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this one more time. There we go. All right, unfortunately, we're going to have the left-hand swing there. Okay, so this area now opens up for that janitor's closet, right? Because we needed a utility sink somewhere, so I'm going to enclose that. And I'm going to go back to home and do wall. Actually, let's see, I'm going to give it a little bit of an area, and I'm going to give it that little nub there in case there's some kind of trim that's going to go along this wall. That way I leave room for that. Now for my janitor's closet, I don't necessarily need a 3 foot door per se. It would be nice because sometimes they're dealing with large things. Let me see if I can get away with a 36 by 84 and see what space. Yeah, that'll work. We can do that. You're going to want this door to swing to the outside though, because whatever we put inside here is not going to have room to swing. So drop that door there. And I'm going to flip this door to see what that looks like. And that's okay. Now I need to align this door to this door so that they're aligned, and I'll do that again with the Align tool, and you go to Modify, Align, and I want center of this line to be aligned to there. Now it was off just a little bit, but enough to definitely be noticeable. So I'll lock that. Alright, so the bathroom's starting to come together here. I'm starting to picture the stalls over here, and obviously the sink's over here, and janitor's closet in here. And we'll go ahead and see if we can find that sink while we're looking at this area. So we're going to do we're going to go to Home, and we're going to insert a component. Okay, a component is a family, essentially. So I'm going to load a family because I know janitors or utility sink's not one of the things that is automatically loaded. I'm going to scroll down to plumbing fixtures, look for our sink. There's a mop sink. You know, sometimes what you're looking for won't be in here, and that's where next week comes in handy, where we need to create custom components. But for this, let's see. I'm thinking a mop sink's going to work fine for this. Yeah, we'll just use mop sink for now. Yeah. All right. So, question is, so many. Should be spinning with the space bar. It doesn't seem to be wanting to spin, so I'm just going to click for now. Select it again, and hit space bar again, and it's moving it. It's not necessarily rotating it. No big deal. Because this is not a wall-based component like a door, it's not requiring it to snap to a wall. So it's saying basically that this sink can go anywhere, and we can maybe do. Let's see what's going to make the most sense here. It's probably going to make more sense to put some shelving down here. So I'm going to select this guy again. I'm going to go to my rotate command. Remember, I have this object selected, so I'm under the, notice the green. The green represents that anything that can modify this is going to be green. This green line covers this rotate. Now to use the rotate, you select the angle that you want to base it off of. So if I want, eventually I want just to be 90 degrees, I'm just going to select here once and snap over to 90. And then click again, and that's going to rotate that. And I'm going to put this kind of right there. That'll let us put some shelving here, and maybe there. Alright, so there's the janitor's closet. Now I'm going to drop some toilet stalls in here. Ooh, you know what I forgot to calculate is actually, I only calculated the toilet stalls. Let me take a look at that. What I forgot to do is calculate urinals. I only calculated toilet stalls, so we'll consider this the women's restroom. Chapter 29 covers plumbing. And it's actually telling me to reference the International Plumbing Code. Unfortunately, so I don't have one of those actually handy. So we'll eyeball that when we get to the men's restroom. We'll have to eyeball that. So we'll just consider, like I said, this the female restroom. So again, I'm going to go up to component. Now I probably already have a toilet loaded here. You might have to load one. Yeah, I have toilet loaded with a 15 and a 19-inch seat height. If you don't, you'll have to go up here to load family and go to plumbing fixtures, toilet, commercial, wall, 3D, and select that, and that'll load the family. I'm going to select a 15-inch for code, and I know that I need, how many? I need 5 of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll make the 5th one accessible. Obviously, we're going to need more room here. It's already kind of tight as far as probably couldn't fit. I'm thinking maybe I could fit the the sinks here, I need 4 sinks. No, 4 sinks isn't going to fit there. I don't want to separate them. Kind of want to stick with the idea of having this area, so we're just going to have to bump this wall down. And I'm going to do that. You can drag the mouse, you can hit the arrow keys. Notice I'm nudging it down, and I'm just going to hit the arrow keys down to give me some more space for now. Okay, you need 18 inches from the wall here, from the center of the toilet. That's just happened. Yeah, that's 18 there. Well, it's 24. Oops. 18 inches. And now we need to add a partition here, and that's actually, I believe, a component in Revit. It was in a component last year. I can't imagine them not being a component this year. So again, I'm going to load family. And let's see, plumbing fixtures. No, it's not there. All right, well, maybe it doesn't exist here. I'm gonna go to my wall tab here again and see if it's under, maybe it was under walls. Nope. Let's see. Okay, I really don't want to just draw lines here. I really want to make sure we're consistent with our three-dimensional work. So what we might do here is leave the partitions for next week when we create custom families. Because for some reason I'm not able to find the partition that existed before. So maybe that's what we'll do. We'll go ahead and drop another toilet in here for now. And we know that that has to have 5 feet. So I'm going to maybe make that, let's see, we're at 20. Well, I'm going to go ahead and make that an even 22 feet. Make this 22 feet. And we'll call that well, we're going to need 22 feet plus, right? Because we have this extra hatchback. So I'm going to drag this. And where's this going? 20. We're going to make this whole thing 28. And we'll make this whole wall 28. There we go. That'll give us room for the walkway here that we need to add, which will be down here. And it looks like we're going to have to maybe extend this as well, because what I don't want is the corner of it. What I definitely don't want is a corner of a door hanging out here in this line of view here. So what we might do is pull this down some more to block that line of sight. But we'll get there as we go. So I'm going to need to move this toilet down here some. I'm not placing these anywhere in particular right now. I'm just placing them here to remind me and give me an idea where I want the toilets to go. Now we obviously need, next week we'll focus on creating these partitions as families that can be adjusted, as well as the countertop to go here. So let's take a look at what they offer for those. Plumbing fixtures again. No, that's not the kind of. So all of these sinks are no good for what we want to use, really. We're looking for a round would do, I guess, if we had to, depending on what kind of sink you want to put in there. These kinds of sinks are more for, well, it even says kitchens. The vanity sinks is probably okay. Sometimes you see ovals and two-dimensional drawings. We might need to create our own sink type too, so that we'll add that to the list. So it looks like next week we'll be focusing a lot on creating bathroom families, and more so than other families. So I'm going to make a note here for bathroom families, and we'll come back to that. I just want to make sure we have enough room for the bathroom. So next week, then we'll focus more on that. I don't want to steer away. I don't want to steer away from what we're trying to do here in general. I am going to go ahead and drop this other wall in here and add the door. So I'll hit that wall there. I'm going to use my extension this time. Notice that blue dashed line comes over here, which tells me now these are in line. Okay, it's okay to go ahead and align these though. That way they're locked together. I'll use modify, align again, and lock that. That way when I move one, it moves the other one. I'm also going to come up here and select this end of this wall and come down and select the end of this wall and align these and lock that. That'll really lock these guys in symmetrically. That way if the length of one of these changes, the other one changes as well. Now obviously if you didn't want that to happen, you wouldn't lock it, or you wouldn't align it to begin with. But in this case, that's kind of what we're looking for. So we'll stick with that, and I'll lock that. And that's actually coming out pretty nice as far as staying on the grid. We could nudge that down a little bit more. You know what? Let's do that. Let's go ahead and do that since it's so close. Construction guys will love you for that. So we want to align to this. I'm going to select the grid line first and then select the center line of the wall and lock that. That'll nudge that down. Now we might have lost a couple inches, but at least on the drawing the dimensions are going to look nice and neat. We're not going to have some weird rounded inch number there. Now our sinks will go along this wall. We'll have to figure out maybe something different because we'll have some urinals here. We're going to go ahead and put in, you know what we'll have to do here is actually we might have to do some rearranging here because we have urinals to consider. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, when we start adding urinals, we can start taking away toilets. So we might have to do some rearranging, but we're going to leave this as is. All right, so go ahead, take your time, go back and look through that. When we come back, I'm going to rearrange the elevator area, and we're going to start adding room tags to the areas that we've already completed and we know what they want to be. Okay, welcome back. It's time to go ahead and look in this elevator area and clean this up. When I left this much space, I wasn't considering the scale of the building, so we're going to end up with 6 elevators, 2 on each side. I went ahead and did some reference as far as what a standard elevator might take up, and it looks like for 2,500 pounds, you end up with a 5-foot by 7-foot elevator. And with the clearance space on both sides, you end up with a 7-foot 10 or an 8-foot deep core, and each elevator separation takes approximately 6 foot 4 inches. So with the space that we have now, and without changing much after that, it works out pretty nice. So what we need to do first is get rid of this elevator. Remember, we put that there basically just to remind ourselves what was going to happen there. I'm going to go to get my wall tools here, save the project if you haven't done so. Okay, with my wall, I'm going to change this back to an 8-inch generic wall. Remember, structural walls are usually much thicker than the 5-inch wall, so we're going to switch this structural core to 8 inches. And I'm going to do 2 runs down the middle here. Maybe you'll see kind of where we're headed. So don't worry about the size. Let's just create 2 horizontal walls. We're going to jump into the split tool. If you remember, using the split tool allows us to trim objects like this. So to split this wall, notice the split element tool up here. I'll select that. I'm going to split this wall, and I'm going to split this wall. Alright, and then I'm going to select my trim tool, and I want to keep this corner, select that, keep this corner, so I'm going to select that. So the split allows you to create that that shape there, and then you can use the trim tool to finish that off. And that line that you're seeing there, you should not actually be seeing that, because remember, we're not on the area plan, and that line is actually the boundary for the area plan. So what I'm going to have you do is go ahead and select that, and right click and do hide in view by elements. Okay, that's going to hide that's going to actually, for just this view, just the 3rd floor, it's going to hide the 3rd floor area plan boundary line. So select elements, and then I'll get rid of that. We must have created a floor as well, so we're going to have to adjust our floor to this opening once we're done with this. Okay, so if you remember, I said the depth of this thing needs to be 7'10", so I'm going to select this inner line. By the way, notice that my witness lines here, or extension lines, are coming to the face. I'm almost positive yours are probably still going to the center of the wall. To adjust that, you go up to Manage, and you go to Additional Settings, and Temporary Dimensions, and instead of selecting center lines here, select faces. And what that does, the temporary dimensions by default select the center lines of walls. If you want to select the faces of the walls, hence this inside and inside, you need to check that. Alright, so make that change. It'll help you speed along the process there. Now, if you want to select the center line, you can drag these witness lines to the centers if you want to. Notice now I can do it either way, or I can drag it back to the faces. So it's best to leave it on faces anyway. Okay, so this needs to be 7'10", 7'10", and this other guy down here needs to be 7'10" as well. That leaves us with a space of 7'4". Now, the recommended value is actually 1.75 for the recommended value for elevators in this orientation, 3 on this side, 3 on this side, with a corridor here. This is where you would wait for the elevator. It recommends that you multiply the depth of each elevator, or the depth of the elevator, by 1.75, and that gives you the minimum out here. So when we do that, we said the depth of the elevator is 5. That gives us 8.75. If we come here, we're actually under that considerably. So this is actually a little bit too small for 3 elevators. For even more elevators, that obviously gets larger because you need a larger space for people waiting for the elevator. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and we've talked about moving this down to here. We're going to go ahead and move all of this down, and that'll correct a lot of our problems. So I'm actually just going to hit the align tool here. This wall looks like a good one. Those will come down. And then I'm going to select this wall again and change that back to 7'10". Now we have plenty of space here for waiting for the elevators. And to keep things nice and centered, we're going to stick with our, let's go back to our home tab, walls, and we said 3 elevators. All right, this is going to be 6'4" for the width. All right, the actual elevator, wait, that's not right. I think I might have made a mistake. It looks like my elevators are actually sideways, so I made a mistake with that. Let's see, let's go ahead and select this wall, change this to 6'4". Select this wall, change this to 6'4". Now we have a really large area here, and I'm okay with that for now. Change this value is supposed to be the 7'10". All right. Sorry about that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to annotate and do an align dimension from the center, from the inside face to this, to this. It's going to be too large. Seven times 12 plus 10 divided by 2 is 47 inches on both sides. So this side needs to be 47 inches. What's happened here is, there we go. And I can delete these dimensions now. Now I have 7'10", and it's centered along this wall here. So, or it's centered on this column, this grid line. So I'm going to add my other 3 walls here. Okay, these are both 7'10" as well. And since we have such a large area here, it would be okay to get away with creating extra elevators, but I think even with 5 floors, this is overkill as far as elevators are concerned. But not to say that we don't add on another 10 or 20 floors, and then we'll be injustice to have this. So we'll go ahead and continue with these. Again, I'm just placing these no certain spot just yet. I'll come back with my align tool and make sure everything's where it needs to be. Remember, select what you want to align to first. All right, so there are the shafts for the elevators. Now we have some spare rooms here. Probably would be mechanical rooms, or even rooms to hold servers or some sort of small utility closet that's not used often. Let's go ahead and see if the default elevator will fit in that space. So I'm going to go to Home, Component, Load in Place, Mechanical Equipment. You might be out of luck here as well. It looks like they don't have an elevator anymore. It used to be under Mechanical Equipment. They have ladders, but not elevators. That makes sense. All right, well, no big deal. It's basically what we would consist of would be a square with an X in it, and we'll focus on that again when we start talking about families again. I'm going to come back over here. Now, we said that this was the women's restroom, so I'm going to go ahead and tag this as the women's restroom. Notice up here by where the area plan was, there's a room thing here. If I select room, it's going to automatically go. See how it's going in between the boundaries of the walls, which is super cool because when it comes time to tagging each one of these rooms, it's as simple as just clicking inside the room. Alright, so I'm going to just click in the center of this room here and hit escape. And that's going to give me room 1 with the room tag below it. So if I double click on room 1, alright, that's simple. And then I'm going to go hit room again and come down here and select again. Notice by default 1, 2, it'll automatically count all the way around. We'll talk about subtags for rooms like this inside of rooms. This shouldn't necessarily have its own room tag. It should be more like 1B maybe. We'll talk about that as we progress through the project. Alright, so we've made some good progress here as far as the plumbing fixtures go, room tags, some more construction. We need to correct this and we need to look at a ceiling plan. So what I mean by correct this is, see this floor boundary still exists here because before the shaft was closed here. So now our floor actually has a huge hole in it. If I go to my third floor view that we created and look in here, you'll see that there's actually a huge opening in that shaft still. And we don't want that because that's no good for people trying to wait for elevators. People don't float. So we need to fix that floor boundary. And we'll do that by just going to the third floor. Select the floor. And when you select the floor, notice up here under the modify things, you get the edit boundary tool. And you can see it's basically just going to consist of dragging this boundary down, dragging this one up so that it meets that line. You could lock that if you want to. That would have saved us hassle the last time, but for this, it's okay. We'll just leave it unlocked. Keeps us on our toes. Actually, you know what I just did doesn't make any sense whatsoever, because now our elevators don't have holes. Now there's just a big hole here. I'm going to drag this back to where it was. Well, not to where it was, but to the inside of the openings here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and lock this one this time. And drag this to there. And I'm going to lock that. Now these walls should technically go all the way to the ground, right? Because they're an elevator shaft. So in order to correct that, what we would actually need to do is change where these walls actually exist. So we'll leave them there for now. This opening doesn't need to be over here because the shaft ends here, right? So I'm going to lock that. Like that. Yeah. Okay, and then I'm just going to come up here with a rectangle and do the other side. And like I said, if you want to lock these, that's okay. If you don't, that's fine. Something like this, sometimes I'll lock, sometimes I won't. It's not crucial. The roof floor overlaps the highlighted walls. Would you like to join geometry and cut overlapping volumes out of the walls? There's not really any good way for me to explain this just yet. I'll wait until we can see it from a different perspective. Just go ahead and hit no here. Alright, there's our new floor. So if I go to 3D view, alright, so wait, what the third floor? You need to select the floor again. Something goofy is going on here. So I'm going to select an area. You need to select an area where you know the floor boundary exists. I know the floor boundary exists on this wall. So I'm going to highlight this and hit tab until the lower left-hand corner it says, when I say lower left-hand corner, I mean down here. This should say floor. So I'm going to hit tab until I see that. So notice where I'm highlighted there. I can't select the floor because the walls are on top of it, but if I hover over it and hit tab, eventually there it goes. It says floor. I can select that, and that'll select my floor after I click edit boundary. For some reason, showing that is still open, when clearly it's not. Hit yes this time and see if it maybe just doesn't like me selecting no there. It might have to do with these walls here, just kind of floating. Let's see what that does. 3D view. It's almost like the floor that we're selecting. You see this floor. It's almost like the floor we're selecting, it looked like it changed the floor below. See that? That's the floor actually below this floor. I'm going to select this floor in this view and go to edit boundary. Yeah, for some reason we were selecting the floor below. Go back to the third floor. And I'm going to hit tab to select the chain. I'm just going to delete everything. It seems like it's going to be just simpler to just drag these rectangles. There we go. Somehow we were selecting the second floor. If you were having that same problem, we just need to go to 3D and select it. So now we have holes in elevator shafts and nowhere else. So now our floor is actually corrected. And if I go to hit tab here, wherever I think my floor would be, I can select my floor there. Under the identity data, if you were having problems with that in the properties here under identity data, you could call this the third floor. And that would help you tell the difference between floors if that problem persists. Alright, so I need to add a room here as well for this area, but basically what happens is you have an open area here, so if I try and hit room, notice the entire area is going to be that room because it's open. So we need to select boundaries. I'm going to hit room and then room separation line, and I want my elevator area to stop right at the edge of these walls. Now when I come up here to room, notice it contains that room now into just this area. So those room separation lines, when you have open spaces, block in that room area. Technically, you're going to want to name these rooms maybe last, because what's going to happen is I'm going to have room 1, 2, and then 3 all the way over here when this is the room 1. And we're on the 3rd floor, so I'm going to rename this 301. And for now, we'll name this 302, 303. Usually, whenever you have multiple floors, you'll have hundreds, so the 3 stands for the 3rd floor. I don't foresee us having 3,000 because I don't see having over 99 rooms here. But you can see if you had over 99 rooms, you would want to use 3,000. 3 would represent the 3rd floor. So the first number is the 3rd floor. These numbers represent the room number. Revit should pick up from 301 on the next one. So yeah, there's 304. So if you put 301 in there, you'll manually have to change ones that are already changed, but the next one that you create will be in line with those. Delete that because I don't know what room I want to be there. Usually the entrance has the lowest number as well, so obviously this is going to be the entrance. Besides having stairways in the corners, it's probably what's going to end up there. Besides having those stairways, entrance would probably start here at 301, and then you would want to work around maybe clockwise through this area, 302, 303, 4, 5, 6, all the way around clockwise. Or counterclockwise, just make sure that it kind of goes in an order and is consistent. The idea of having 301 jump to 302 is not good. So what's going to happen is once we start naming some of these, I'll eventually drop the numbers and rename those. I just wanted to show you the room tag option there and the availability to do that. So these numbers are going to change as we go. It's kind of sloppy to have a 301 to 302, so 301 will stay here, and we'll work from this in the future. All right, let's go ahead on this 3rd part of the video and wrap things up. We'll look at a ceiling plan, reflected ceiling plan. I want to look at the object properties, object styles, materials, and so on and so forth. And from there, we should be ready to start creating custom families and further model this 3rd floor next week. So by default, Revit has a list over here on the left in the project view for ceiling plans. So every time you create a floor plan, automatically Revit decides to create this ceiling plan over here. So if we're interested in the 3rd floor, click on that. There's a couple of things that if you remember during our meeting last week, I showed you how to bring the doors back, and we're going to go through that again. because it's very important. If you notice, the doors are missing in this plan, and as far as reflected ceiling plans go, you need to show the door openings. You don't necessarily show the door panel or the door swing, so we need to get back our door openings. And to do that, we need to change where Revit is cutting through our wall. So in order to create a reflected ceiling plan, Revit decides what height would be a good height to cut and flip your ceiling, essentially, to take a look. If we scroll down in our properties here, you'll notice a thing called view range here. Hit edit there. Okay, so what we're looking at here, basically, the only number that's available right now without selecting anything else is this middle offset here, and it happens to be the cut plane. So if you remember, we were creating our doors, or we created our doors 7 feet high. So if the cut plane's offset 7'6", it's going to miss the doors by 6 inches. So if we want to see the tops of the door panel or the door frames or jambs, we need to adjust this to be at least below 7 feet. So we can change this obviously as low as we want, but you have to be careful because you also, on a reflected ceiling plan, don't want to show anything above a certain level either. You definitely don't want furniture to appear. Any casework that's on the floor, you don't want it to appear. So you don't want to take this down too far, but you need to make sure that it goes down far enough that it includes the doors in the cut. Right now it's cutting above the doors. So if we know that our highest door jamb right now is going to be 7 feet, the lowest possible door that we would probably have is maybe 80 inches. We could get away with, maybe, let's do 70 inches here, and I'll hit apply. Now, after I do that, this changes to 5'10", but also notice the doors come back in the reflected ceiling plan, which is what we need. We definitely don't need the door swings, and I'm going to show you how to get rid of those next, but we definitely need the door openings in a reflected ceiling plan. So we have our door openings back here, we just need to get rid of this material here, because like I said, in a reflected ceiling plan, this is unwanted stuff. You don't need this hanging around because you wouldn't see it. Okay, so to get rid of this extra information, we take a short journey down the object style lane. And there's two different ways that you can go about doing this. I'm going to show you first of all under Manage Object Styles. I'm going to save the project. Okay, now if you remember when I was talking about object styles, I emphasized that object styles are global. Okay, anything that I change in the object styles is going to change across the board. All of these views, all of that's going to change if I change it in object styles. Object styles is kind of like the global properties manager for display information. So under doors, I have such things as elevator swing or elevation swings all the way down to plan swing, along with the line weight of projection or cut, whether the line has been cut or if it's just projected. Remember the difference. The line color, line material, and so on and so forth, and the material. Again, more things to be covered later, especially the annotation objects. These have to do with any kind of tags or text that we're going to place. Imported objects, if we bring in a DWG from AutoCAD, you'll notice that all of the layers will come in here as well as the objects. So whenever we want to control imported objects, we'll notice that we can do that here as well under object styles. We don't have anything now. However, because we still want our doors to be how they are on the floor plan here, go to third floor, we don't want the doors to change here. We only want the doors to change on the ceiling plan. So we need a view-specific change. And anytime that we do a view-specific change, we do a visibility graphics override for this view. So we go to the actual view and we go to the properties of the view. Okay, I don't have anything selected, but I'm in the properties. I go to visibility graphics and hit edit. Now this is almost exactly the same as object styles, except for it's view dependent. You can see it says visibility graphic overrides for reflected ceiling plan third view. So these, whatever changes I make in here are only going to affect this view, third floor ceiling plan. They're not going to affect anything else. So if I scroll down to doors, because doors is what we're interested in, these swings, you'll notice that there's check marks besides the different components of this door family. And we've already decided that we don't want to show the swing. We don't want to show the panel. And some of these other ones might show up as well if there's glass or frame, so it's good to get rid of those as well. Elevation swing we don't need to really worry about because this isn't an elevation. There's no hidden lines. We definitely want to show the opening, right? We want to keep that opening. So if I hit apply there, you'll notice that those swings go away. Alright, so if I go to opening here, and go under lines, override pattern, and do a hidden line here. Okay. Now, when I change that to hidden line, what should happen technically is this should change to a hidden line. However, this line is represented by the family type itself. So in order to change this line, you actually would have to change the family. And there are ways around this issue that we're having here. If I, for instance, go to walls, see. Since all of these lines are represented by cuts, whatever is not cut should be considered a projection or a surface line. So if I override that to a hidden line, you'll notice that it cuts that into a hidden line. The downside of that is it also cuts your windows. So you have to go around with your windows to your windows and draw lines over top of that window cut. And you can make this smaller by going back to edit, down to wall again, and make that hidden a 16th. And there you go. So that's more of kind of what you would be looking for if you were going to show your hatch. And then again, if you were going to do that, you would have to go around and clean this up with your windows. Unless you create a actual line type in a family, it's going to be tough to create this. So for now, we're going to just act like the straight lines don't bother us, and they're actually okay. It's going to be okay for what you're doing here. So I'm going to go back and change this back to how it was. Change this to no override. And that'll give us our solid line back. Solid lines back on the windows as well. So we're going to leave this how it is for now. And this is going to be okay. Okay, so now we've got our doors back. That was the primary goal there. The next step is to actually create ceilings. This section line shouldn't be visible in a ceiling plan. Okay, this should only be visible in a construction floor plan or a construction plan. So I'm going to select this and hide in view by elements. That'll get rid of that. So that's no longer in the way. Alright, and since we're focusing on the restroom area, I'm going to go ahead and go to the restrooms and create ceilings. So I'm going to go to the Home tab, where most of the ceiling or most of the objects are created. Scroll over to ceiling, select that, and you'll see by hovering over these rooms it automatically gives me the actual room, which is nice if that's what I'm looking for. And that's because automatic ceiling is on. Notice it's giving me that choice. However, I envision the ceiling being two different levels in the entryway and in the actual restroom itself. So I'm going to select sketch ceiling, and that's going to give me my sketch tools back. And so what I'll do is, I imagine what will happen is the ceiling will be low on the entry, and then it will open up to a larger ceiling here. So this low ceiling might protrude out a little bit into here. So I'll sketch a line around the inside of the wall here. Okay, so there's my first ceiling. And let's see. Okay, there. And it looks like by default it's a 2x4 grid. If I select it, you'll see under the properties of that ceiling, it is indeed a 2x4, which is okay. I'm going to change it to a 2x2. I think 2x4 is a little too much. So I'll change that to a 2x2. And then maybe this area inside here opens up. So we need to change the height of this as well. And you can see the height offset from floor here. Scroll this over. From floor, from level is at 8 foot. So the ceiling height right now for this ceiling is at 8 feet. And that's fine. I think if you recall, we set our heights in that area to be, what did we set that to? Let me move my section here. I'm going to go to the third floor. Looks like I have hidden my section view here, so I'm going to click on Reveal Hidden Elements with the light bulb. When you select the light bulb, that shows you everything that is hidden in pink. So there's all the tags that we've been hiding. The section, sure, site base point, what that is, but it's hidden. So I'm going to unhide this by selecting it, right-clicking, and going to Unhide and View Elements. Now if I turn the light bulb off, that section marker will be back. So that's how you unhide items by using the Reveal Hidden Elements. Select what you want to be unhidden, which hidden items are this magenta pink color. Right-click and unhide. And then to exit, you select the light bulb again. So I want to see, I'm actually going to drag this section over so that it goes through my restrooms. And I don't need it to go that far. Just give it to there. This is the view depth here, so I'm going to just double click on the triangle and that'll take me to that view. Alright, so here are our toilets on the wall. And here's the door, here's that 8-foot ceiling, here's the door into the restroom, and here's that separation. So, and here's the men's restroom separation here. So you can see the 8-foot wall here, or I'm sorry, the 8-foot ceiling here. So I want my ceiling to come up even higher in here, maybe 10 feet or so, because I think we have 12 feet to play with. So I'm going to go up 10 feet, and this ceiling will start over here. So back to third floor ceiling plan. Create a ceiling. This time change 10 feet. And let's say you want to change materials on this one. I don't want it to be a 2x4 anymore. I want it to be gypsum wallboard or drywall, as we better know it. So the higher ceiling will be drywall. I want to sketch my ceiling, and it can just be a rectangle of this room here. Create layers. Okay. Now, my ceiling's obviously here. Let me go back to my section. There's my ceiling. It's not showing up as a gypsum wallboard though, so I need to change that. I need to go back to my ceiling plan. I need to find my ceiling. Remember, you do that by hovering over an area where you know it exists and hitting tab. I actually could select it here as well, but I'm going to actually hover here and hit tab until it says ceiling. And there it is. I'll click, and I'll see that my material here, gypsum wallboard on metal stud, is selected. Okay, so I'm going to, I need to find this material and edit it so that I see the, the speckled thing that usually you see on reflective drywall ceilings. So what I need to do now is locate this material, gypsum wallboard. So to do that, you go to Manage and Materials. Okay, so the materials is going to pull up, remember, the list of everything that Revit has by default as a material. So this is all of the different materials available when you create an object. You can create duplicates of these materials by selecting the duplicate thing. If you remember, for example, freeform is a popular material used in the interior design community, but it's not an option in here. So what I would do is find my closest option, which would be plastic. Remember, I would hit duplicate, and I would name this freeform, and hit OK. And that's going to add freeform to the list. So now freeform is a material, so I could actually now, instead of having gypsum wallboard, change that to freeform, and we'll see how to do that later on. What I'm concerned about now is using gypsum wallboard, but getting the surface pattern back. So I'm going to go to where gypsum wallboard is here, and we'll see that the surface pattern actually has none, but the cut pattern has sand. So that would mean if somehow that material was, I can't even imagine how that material would be cut, but if somehow that material was cut, you would see the sand pattern. We actually want to show it when it's not cut, because when we look at a ceiling, the ceiling hasn't been cut, we're actually looking at the surface of a ceiling. We actually want the surface pattern to be this sand. So I'm going to select sand for surface pattern as well. Hit apply, and hit OK. So now we have that sand texture there that's customary for drywall products. So now we have our two different levels here. I'm not going to create the ceilings in this area just yet because I'm not sure what I want to do. I'm going to create the ceilings in the elevator area next. I might do something a little bit different here, simply because it's the first thing that you see, and I'm sure there would be some extravagant chandelier on the ceiling or something like that. So I envision a 8-foot ceiling. It would probably be a little bit higher than 8 foot. 8 foot's really low, so it would actually probably be like this area would have to be higher than 12 feet. And we're not going to get into that right now, so I'm just going to kind of fudge this. We're going to say that we have an 8-foot ceiling here to start off with. So I'm going to go to home, and I'm going to go to ceiling, and let's see. I'm going to sketch my ceiling. I'm going to do a rectangle. Okay, I'm going to come over here to properties and change this to 8 feet. I'm going to change my material to, actually, no, I'm going to leave, no, I'm going to change my material to 2 by 2. This time, I'm going to do a cove up in the center of this by coming over to my midpoint slowly, coming over here. Well, I'll just draw it for now. I'm going to do a circle cutout 5 feet. And I'm going to align that using the align tool. Let's see, maybe I won't align that. I don't think it's going to let me align a circle. So what I'm going to have to actually do for this guy is do if it's a 5-foot circle, I can do a dimension. I'll just do 5 feet. Let's see. Center mark visible, yes. That'll give me something to dimension to. So you need to make sure that's on in order to grab a hold of that guy. I want to align this to this. There we go. And I would need a temporary line here to get the intersection in this way for that. So it's kind of a pain, but I'm going to have to go ahead and draw a line temporarily across here. This line will be deleted. I just need it basically to a line that's, notice how far off I'm there. It's not far, but I'll align that to there. And then I can delete that line. I'm done with it. Alright, so now that's located in the center of the elevator rooms. That's where I wanted it. And I hit OK. So you notice that the middle was cut out of that. So now I can do a higher ceiling of another circle where the chandelier would be attached there. So if I do, let's see, home, ceiling, and we'll sketch the ceiling and it'll be a circle. Need to find the center of the circle again. Probably eyeball this and and it'll snap in there. I want it to be just a little bit bigger, and I also want it to be at 10 feet. And gypsum wall boards, I want it to be a different material as well. So that'll put gypsum wall board up higher in that area. Now the problem with adding ceiling is we're gonna start to lose our 3D view of the third floor exterior, right? Because now we have these ceilings kind of blocking our view in some of these areas. And you can see there's the ceiling, and we would need to create a kind of like a skirt around there, as well as out here too, a skirt to block that. And we would do that later. I'm not worried about that necessarily right now. But to get an idea of what we're looking for in this elevator corridor, what we can do is we can go to back to our third floor, not our ceiling plan now, just our third floor. Go to our elevator lobby, go to view, 3D view, and we're going to this time select camera, and we're going to select a corner of this corridor and drag. Select, hold, and drag in this direction, and click. And that's going to show us that opening with the 3D view there. I can zoom in and out as well. We'll talk about adjusting this camera more, but we can widen the perspective of the lens by dragging these guys out. Now we would need a skirt up in there. We're missing our elevator. We've got a lot of work to do still, obviously, but to show you that the 3D view is now available down here, we'll call this, we want to make sure we call this camera, or let's see. Yeah, we'll call this camera elevator lobby. And the reason I say call it camera is because you need to be able to tell the difference between when you have a 3D view like we had before or a perspective camera view. So it's no longer a third floor exterior, it's the camera or the elevator lobby. That way we want to make sure we name these properly so we can find them easy. You're going to end up with a lot of them by the time it's all said and done. Back to ceiling. Okay, so our ceiling plan's starting to come along in these two areas. We're going to look at creating our own custom stuff in the future. Not necessarily today. I kind of just wanted to introduce you to the concept of object styles and especially the concept of materials. And begin under manage. Find that these are the default materials to work with. And we can add, as you saw, I could add 3form and I could add a texture to 3form if I wanted to. I could adjust the render appearance and the graphics and stuff if we were going to do a three-dimensional rendering of this. Usually we're only concerned about these two patterns as far as when it comes to drafting. Yes, this other stuff has to do with three-dimensional rendering, which we probably won't get to in this course since we start using 3D Studio Max here in a few weeks. We kind of rely on that to create our renderings. So we don't really focus on the creation of real materials, we just need the patterns, and we see that here. Now if we need an extra pattern, that's a different story. The fill patterns here are the default, kind of like AutoCAD has the default hatches. So the fill patterns, as you can see, can be edited as well. They're not easy to create the same way as hatch patterns in AutoCAD aren't easy to create. You need to be familiar with creating that kind of stuff in a text file. It's beyond the scope of this class. Basically, you can edit the orientation and stuff of the hatches that are available. Usually, the hatches that are available are ample for what we're doing here. We usually don't need anything more than this. There's usually one in here we can pick. So you can edit these. You can create new ones. It's a bit tricky. If you're trying to create one from scratch, you can create a new one and alter an old one. So as you can see, those hatches are related to the materials, and that the materials acquire the hatches to show you what they look like in two-dimensional. So it goes from a material to a pattern or a hatch, and that's kind of like the hierarchy for those two. Right. So last but not least, to look at the project units here. We didn't have to set anything up because by default we were okay with these. If we wanted to change our length or our slope or currency units, we could change that in here under project units. We can change it to whatever available units there might be. And we see that there's a good amount of different units available. Project information, as I said, is kind of like just management stuff. Later, once we create title blocks, if by chance you did fill any of this stuff in, your title block would be updated with the information that's inside of here, or you can directly edit your title block and it will fill in the information in here for you. This isn't necessarily a huge deal. And we talked about object styles already. The fill patterns is what I showed you. It's another way to get to the fill patterns under additional settings. Line styles, you can consider just like in AutoCAD when we had our different line styles. We can come in here and select those and modify those. Now, these are kind of like additional settings that we won't really focus on necessarily, but I'll bring it up every once in a while when I see fit, and I think it's something that we should talk about. So that about covers it. So what you should have is exactly where I'm at this point. You should have your reflected ceiling plans on these two areas with the two different heights, and on the actual floor plan itself, your floor plan should be at this state. This is what you should have. The section marker can be there or it can be hidden. It doesn't matter. I like to cycle between it. Because it's a floor plan, it's okay to keep it there for now because I like to jump back and forth quickly between views. Next week we're going to talk about annotate. We're going to talk about custom. First of all, we're going to finish off with some annotation as far as in the ceiling plan, adding ceiling tags and other tags to the reflected ceiling plan. So we'll talk about annotations, but we're really going to focus mainly next week on the creation of custom families, especially in the restroom here. Remember, we need to create our own custom partitions. We need to create our own custom vanity. Maybe think about creating a custom sink. We need to create our shelves in this area here. We need to create a two-dimensional elevator block that we can drop in here. So next week we're really going to hit the families for the most part. So for next week, make sure that you have up to where we are now completed and submitted for the following week. I will see you next week.